Ah, yes. Here we are. Shitty internet connection can't hold down the Graders Notes crew. When there's a will, there's a way. And here we are. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. You're tuned into episode 8 of Graders Notes. And before I get to the awesome panel that holds it down every week, I just want to acknowledge all the homies that are in the chat at the moment. Unruly Simeon, first man in the gate, chat all-star. The comic collector, what is up, my brother? Gino was holding it down during my technical difficulty. I appreciate that, sir. Caleb the comic Smurf in the building. Fun fact about Caleb, he has a secret fantasy to release a zombie plague on the world and kill everybody so he can rule them. But that's a story for another day. Tune into 20 Questions to see what that was about. Super Rust 9000, who I think is a rebrand of RLM Comics, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. That's Russ, yeah.
Russ. Good to see you, Russ. I like the new name. Hiya Lucha Libre, Comic Bro. What's up, my man? Mr. Metarog. Presence is being felt in the chat. Mr. Miracle. Discovery Bay Comics. He was just saying that he's tuned in to Mr. Miracle's undervalued videos. Who isn't? Great content. My man Don, Master Don Comics and Collecting. Good to see you hopping in to the chat, my friend. And Mega Comics in the house. Tomb of Comics. Hell come, my man. Old Wolf 65. Oh my God, there's so many cool homies in here. Perry Comics, of course. And I think that rounds out the chat. Attendance has been taken. And now, for the main event players. Mr. Genome Presents, fresh off of his, what seemed like a cross-country world tour on 2 wheels. How are you this evening?
Oh, I am dandy. It was actually pretty close. It was about 2,000 miles or so. It wound up being about 850 miles each way just to get down there, and then a ton of riding around while I'm down there. But I feel good. Actually got some color to me now. It's amazing. So, yeah, I've shed my northern glowingness for a bit to back and embrace my old Florida tan color. So, but very glad to be here tonight, especially since we get to review one of my favorite literary characters of all time. So, all right, just very looking forward to it.
Hell yeah, me too. I really do look forward to these shows so much. I'm like, hell yeah, Graders Note. So good to see you, sir. He will neither confirm nor deny his affiliation to Hell's Angels. We'll just leave it at that. The man, the conductor of the contests, the man with a strong handle on the English language, even though it's his second language, I recently learned, which is just amazing. My man Metarog, Roger, how are you, my brother?
I am just fabulous, Kenny. Thank you very much for that just very poignant introduction. I'm just ablaze and ready to go.
Hell yes. And what's up, Biggie Shack, my brother? Good to see you joining us. And Michael Riscol, my man. And no, this is not, Graders Notes is a bit of a play on words. We're not going over actual grading conditions of books. We're reviewing a book and assigning grades. Last but not least, what's up, Steven Spock? Good to see you, bro. Last but not least, your master of ceremonies for the evening, the man who's kind of running point. You know, as you know, the member of the show that puts the book forth into the Graders Notes arena, kind of plays point and runs the ship. So your host for this evening, Mr. Undervalued, Mr. A-OK, Mr. Miracle. What's up, my man?
Hey, thanks for that introduction, Kenny. I really appreciate that. So I'm going to host the show tonight. Super excited about doing that. It's my pick to pick Conan the Barbarian #1. It's from 1970. This, of course, is a True Believers copy. This, of course, is a 1970s copy, which, you know, I went to my LCS and picked this guy up for $1. because then I don't get sticky peanut butter fingers all over my good copy, my older copy. Just, real excited that we're doing a Bronze Age book. If anybody's been watching any of my videos for a long time, they know that I love the Bronze Age. So it was my pick, definitely, to pick this classic issue. And the three gentlemen that I'm with, I'm going to love to see their insights into this book. If you've never joined us on Graders Note before, we usually go over the 5 categories. We check out the cover, we check out the interior art, we go over the story, we go over the concept of the book itself, and then the overall book as a whole is our final grade. And we always like to have you guys give us your grades on how you feel. So hopefully you went to your LCS and picked up a True Believers copy, or perhaps you're a Bronze Age collector and you've already had an original copy that you haven't read for a while and you picked that one up. But let's go ahead and jump right into the Graders Notes, and we are going to start this round off with a cover, right? Let's start at the beginning, the big cover on the front, and I am going to start with the Mighty Medarog. And let us know, sir, how do you feel about Conan the Barbarian #1's cover?
Well, thank you, Dave. Thank you for putting me on the point here. I'm the first one to take a bullet right in the head here. Okay, no problem. Well, first of all, I have a reprint of this cover of this issue from Conan 22 because my LCS did not have the trilogy, but I do have a high-res copy digitally of the cover. And, what can you say about this cover except that it is everything you wanted for an adaptation of this type? I'm not going to get too much into Robert E. Howard and how he created and thought about this concept. We're going to talk about that later. But look at the cover. It's Conan ablazing in the middle with weapons, at the ready, spear, sword, and dagger. There is a lady being protected or being looked over while there's an attack on the foreground, while there's a massive battle in the background and flying creatures. This is quintessential sword and sorcery cover here.
And Roger, by the way, sorry to interrupt you, but I don't see the cover on your screen.
I don't. I'm sorry. I have it on my phone here that I'm looking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
You're good.
So to me, this cover ticks off all the marks of a cover for a first issue, for a first in a genre. Thank you for showing that, Kenny. For first in a genre, it really captures your attention with the size of Conan and all of the activity. It's a frenetic cover of the activity, which is, it exudes the savagery. It just oozes the start of a genre, the action, everything that's going to come in behind it is almost there in the cover. To me, this is almost an unimprovable cover. The only thing that I would detract is that, and I know because of the comics code, I wish that there was a little more battle damage on the different characters. In a scrum of this sort, there would be slashes. There would be, I know that blood was a no-no because this, of the situation with the comics code we'll get into later. So that's my only slight detraction. But to me, this is near perfection. 4.5.
4.5 from Medarog. Excellent score. Excellent opinion on this excellent cover. Or is it? Do you feel it's an excellent cover out there? Dave, the Gino, tell us what you think of Barry Windsor Smith's classic cover here.
Well, let's say this. It reaches out and grabs you. It kind of lets you know from the cover what this book's going to be all about, or what the character's going to be all about. Because you have to remember, when this book came out, too, Conan wasn't a household name. He was very, very barely known. I mean, just to pulp readers out there, because there's no movie out there yet. That's what brought him to the mainstream. So, yeah, he's basically introducing a new character to the entire world. So you need to do it with a bang. So what they do, they sit him right there wading in through the midst of battle as he is wont to do. But okay, there it is. Sorry, my screen wasn't changing over there. So as far as action and eye grabbing goes, this cover is stupendous. It's really good. But there's a lot of technical problems with it that really mar it, I think. Where to begin? The proportions of Conan are all off real badly. His legs, especially. When I first saw this, I thought he kind of looks like a troll because of the horn helmet and all that, and his kind of gangly legs and all that. Conan's supposed to be really broad and thick and all that, and his legs. He's obviously skipped leg days. He has no calves to speak of at all, and his quads definitely need some work. He's got squats to do, let's just say. But the sword looks kind of funky. I know that the angles are difficult to capture there. Just a lot going on there that doesn't work. His wrist bend is kind of strange looking, even though it's probably anatomically correct somewhat. But I do like the background, how everything's kind of shaded out a little bit, but it still has a fair amount of detail for all the attackers there. The female is drawn pretty well, and it's kind of the classic pose with Conan or most of those, loincloth and sword stuff back then, kind of wrapped around the leg. It's actually a look that Arnold Schwarzenegger revisited again in some of his later photo shoots. But colors are okay. They're kind of in keeping with the tone of things. I don't know about that big old necklace thing he's wearing. Conan's a freaking warrior. He doesn't adorn himself with that kind of stuff. Like when he's in battle, it would just give him something for the enemy to grab onto. But I'm probably just being overly nitpicky. It's good in the fact that it just makes me want to pick it up and read it for that. But there's so many technical issues with it, it kind of hurts the score. So I'm kind of giving it a middle of the road at 2.5. A lot of promise. And some of that is remedied inside the book. But if you did a little more work on the legs and maybe a couple of the appendages, I would have liked it better. But yeah, just a 2.5.
How dare you? Anyway, we'll ignore what just happened there. And let's hear from the man, the macho head, Mr. 84. Tell us, how do you feel about Barry Windsor Smith's cover?
Yes, I'd love to. So, at first glance, the cover is cool looking, However, I have some issues with it. To me, I feel like this guy doesn't really look like the Conan that I know. I understand that, and it gets into the story a bit, that we're talking to younger Conan, but to Genome's point, the proportions of this guy, he just looks too scrawny to me. He looks like a scrawny guy. The limp wrist action that he has going on with that spear doesn't feel like a strong pose with that weapon. The list is I can't have the tongue twister. The wrist is limp. The sword has some. I feel like that sword looks kind of ridiculous, to be honest. I feel like he didn't pull off the perspective very well. So I have a lot of issues with the Conan drawing itself. Looking at this makes me appreciate John Buscema's artwork when it comes to Conan. One thing that Buscema was always really good at is drawing bodies in really dynamic poses, and he could show bodies in motion like none other. Even sometimes when on paper they seem like it would be an awkward position, but he just had a way to do it that it always looked natural. And Barry Smith does not have the kind of command that Buscema does with poses like this, I feel. Now, I think, and I'm not crazy about the gal here. I feel like her face looks a bit wonky. I think that's a huge jawline. And he didn't make her face look real dainty. I feel like her face looks pretty jacked, to be honest. And I'm not a fan of, in the corner here, these two hands holding, I guess, the handle of a sword. I feel like that space could have been used better. Maybe if you showed some of the blade, one hand showing some of the blade of the sword, with just showing those two hands holding that.
And he's showing the blade at the top.
Where?
The axe blade at the top.
Oh, this thing here?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, well, that's on the artist to not. He didn't portray that very well, in my opinion. But those are my beefs. You know, the stuff that I like about it is I like what they went for. Dynamic pose of the hero in the forefront, and I like that all like the enemies in the background are muted in that blue color. I think it makes Conan pop out front, and I think that was a clever way to like not let that crowd the image on the cover. I feel like the symmetry of having these two flying demon guys was a nice touch. Gives the page good balance, and I love like the slogans on it: "To the death," "Coming of Conan," like perfect first issue lettering. So as you can see, I have beef with it. I'm very happy with some of it. I go middle of the road too. I say 2.5.
Man,
Man, harsh. You guys are harsh today.
that's gonna make my blood boil.
Hey, we calls them like we sees them.
I guess that's some people's opinion. How could you not love this cover?
It's two people.
I mean, look at it. Look at the way the Barry Windsor Smith. Barry Windsor Smith was like, this is early Barry Windsor Smith for sure, but he has always been a master of conveying a lot of action in his poses. Like, I mean, you look at this and you know Conan's doing something. He's throwing something. He's whipping around, you know, at other enemies coming from behind. There's enemies in front of him. Like, there's a big sense of impending doom and stuff. The body pose he puts him in, you know, maybe that makes it look like it's a little bit off in his body perspective, but no, I disagree. I'm looking at proportions, and that's about right for superhero proportions, right? It's just kind of a weird plot pose that he's in, so I could see how that would be like a little bit off-putting. I do like this fade from the burnt sienna, or through the ochre and then into the burnt sienna, or from burnt sienna into the ochre and then into yellow here. I think that makes a really nice fade without really obscuring Conan. Putting these guys into that like shadowy blue also helps to make Conan pop, right? I think, and again, you know, Barry is doing a smart thing. If you know about composition, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to another to always create balance, right? And what you do up here in this corner, you have to do down here as well. So he's got color objects, color object, color object, color object, right, to create this balance inside there. There may be a couple of weird things, like I think there should have been just, you know, more tension in that arm to show that he's like ready to whip that spear. But it is kind of a cool pose, like if you're coming all the way around, this weird like pose to do it. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Barry Windsor Smith, so I might be a little bit biased on this, and I might, you know, unfriend you guys after the show and stuff like that. But, you know, take that personally, all right? I mean it. Because, yeah, I got to give this cover full on 5. But like, as soon as I saw this, as soon as I saw this True Believers copy medals, yes, I was like, man, I haven't read that forever. That's a Grader's note. And it was the cover. I was like, damn, I remember that, man. That cover grabbed me again. I just always drawn to this Conan the Barbarian number one cover. It was one of the first key books I ever had to have because I just love that book so much. And yeah, I'm glad they put out a True Believers copy. I'm glad there's new ones. If you guys haven't noticed, I've got the first 8 Conan the Barbarian here. Right, I've pretty much completed numbers 1 through 100 now. I'm continuing on to the other 275, or up to 275. But you know, Barry Windsor Smith also had to design the comic book character Conan. Right, if you read Howard's stories, Conan doesn't go into battle like dressed like this. He goes in armor. And he's a big guy, and he dresses in armor, and he carries a battle axe and all kinds of stuff, right? So Barry was like, well, that's not really super exciting. I want to put more muscular tones in there and get him like moving around and jumping around like a great warrior and stuff like that. So feeling like this is Barry's unique design and unique take on Conan, yeah, I got to keep with the 5.
Oof.
Number 5 from Mr. Miracle. You've seen some variation in the grades.
You
And,
think?
and I
little
also
bit.
want to give a warm welcome to a couple of the homies that have popped in the chat over the past couple minutes. Mr. Comics with Bueller, good to see you, sir. Bake the Snake, my man, the wielder of the blue wrench. And finally, the Tone has come back to a Grader's Notes chat. Good to see you, brother.
All right.
Let me sorry. Here, let me also kind of go into a little bit what Miracle was saying as well. For those of you who read the books, Robert Howard was always describing Conan moving like a panther. So it's kind of interesting.
One sec before you go off, David. Let's get the chat involved. While we talk about this, you guys, tell us your grades on what you feel this is, and then we'll listen to David while everybody puts in their grades, and we'll get an overall score at the end of this. Okay, yeah. Sorry to interrupt, bud. Go ahead.
No, that's good. It's how we that's how we maximize our time here. But yeah, so Robert Howard's always describing the way Conan fought and moved is like a panther or a tiger, or like that, some sort of big cat, kind of fluid. And so that is kind of a cool aspect that I think he tried to work into the cover, because he's not just standing there stoically or like a hulking brute. He's a very dynamic warrior in all things. So yeah, I do like how they capture that in this. So I don't really have a problem with the pose at all. It's just some of the other parts of it.
To me,
yeah, I mean, he's
hulking brute Conan. That was one thing that didn't resonate as much.
One problem though is you don't really have anything to judge his size against on his cover that well, other than the damsel in distress. So yeah, he does look a little bit scrawny, but everything's kind of in the background, so it is really kind of hard to judge. But like if one of those warriors was next to him, he should be towering over him.
Watch, look at Conan's thigh, and then look at her thigh right here, and they're pretty close.
She didn't skip leg day.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Hey, listen, if you guys, you have to remember this is a young Conan, maybe 19, and he didn't go to the gym to work out. He worked out by surviving, and some of that times that means that he had to run, and so he was probably more of a runner, more of a stalker than an absolute brute. Because you don't have to be an absolute brute. You have to be limber. You have to be quick. You have to be cunning. Okay, to wield sword, dagger, and survive in this age where it's, forget about dog eat dog, it's dog eat everything. All right. So a muscle bound guy may not be the exact kind of guy that you want for this situation, especially at this age. You want somebody that's quick. You want somebody that's just an absolute, razor sharp kind of warrior. And you do not have to be that strong. He could be strong, but you don't have to show it. Swimmers are incredibly strong, but they have very long, lean muscles, and that's what I consider Conan at this time.
Yeah, you're more used to the modern take. Like this is Adi Gradov, right? Like that's a big, beefy Conan right there.
That's right. Yeah, and even Savage Sword,
Yeah.
Well,
a lot of the Frazetta stuff.
That looks good on a cover, but for practical purposes, it's probably not the best in a situation like that.
Yeah, maybe not practical, but that's how Howard wrote him. Like right before he killed Balpator in one of the stories, he's like, he was making fun of how the other guy thought he was strong. He's like, try breaking the neck of a wild Sumerian bull before you call yourself strong. He's like, I did that before I was a full grown man. So it's like he was obviously a big, huge, strong guy even in his youth. So yeah, it didn't translate too well to that. But anyway,
he was. But in a pulp, you can show that a little differently because it's in your head. But when you're putting it on a 4-color paper, this is the more practical look.
All right, so we ready for some grades here, pulling in.
Tony saying a highlight comment that says, kind of looks like Michael Phelps with a sword.
Maybe Greg Louganis. I don't know.
Greg Louganis. Oh, well, you're going way back now.
Oh.
You're going way back.
All right,
Eddie Hall. For your Europeans over there.
Kenny, you're going to do the honors.
I got the abacus ready.
You got the abacus ready. All right, here we go. Unruly Simeon, I knew this, coming in with a 5. Boatwright, welcome, 3. Comic Collector says 3. Hialeah, 4.5. That's my man. Biggie Shap said 3.5. Oh, I expected a little higher from him. Okay. Jason from Heroes to Icons, welcome, 4. Tomb of Comics, Mike gives it a 4. Russ, 3. Grayman, 3.5. Steven Spock, both him and his dog give him a 5. Don, Mastodon, gives it a 2.5. And I think that is it. Nope, Tony Sanders comes in with a strong 4. Just Rican comes in with a 5. He's a Mr. Miracle fan.
Nice job, Justin.
Okay, I think that's it, Kenny.
Awesome, man! 15 votes. That's one of the largest amounts of votes we've ever gotten on us. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And that gets us to a chat grade of 4.
Right.
There you go.
Nice. But I tell you, the chat's never wrong, man. The chat's never wrong.
Got that
That's
down.
wrong. Neither am I.
I wanted to like it.
That remains to be seen.
So we're going to continue on. We're going to hit our next topic, and we're going to stick with the art, I think, and we'll talk about Barry Windsor Smith's interior art. And this time, I would like to start with the Brain Trust, Mr. Gino.
Oh, okay then. So let me go ahead and pull my issue out here so I can have something to show people. A lot of the interior art is, let me get my timer going, sorry. It's kind of reflected, and it looks a lot like the actual cover itself. A lot of bright colors. I noticed that for such a gray and desolate land, especially because he's in the northern lands in this story. So you think it'd be a little more, I don't know, more bland and bleak and gray. That's he always describes the North, or how the North is always described. But there's a lot of color in this book. I mean, some of this is the reprint, of course. They're making the colors pop, but a lot of action scenes in this book. If you can, hopefully you can make those out. But you see, like, even the demons themselves are a nice bright red color, which is kind of off-putting in honesty. You think even like more black or gray, because once again, in the books, all like the demonic stuff are really like black as night and all that for the most part, real dark color. So, it's good throughout. I don't like the way Conan's drawn still though. Like this face shot here, it really irks me for some reason. He looks almost emaciated in some shots, and he looks normal size in others. But the action's drawn real well. And there's a lot of it. There's a lot of action. They don't sit around and drink tea like in modern comics. He gets down to it from page 1, and he basically stays that way throughout. There's very little exposition in this, maybe 2 or 3 pages worth total. But I like the panel layout is perfect. That's one thing that most people don't really give much credence to in the books, but I do. Everything's easy to read, easy to see. They don't play too many tricks in here with what bleed over panels and nothing like that. But it's just, I don't know. There's some strange looking stuff in here. The shaman, and they might draw him like this on purpose to make him look kind of, I don't know, demented or whatever. But a lot of square lines, or like square heads and faces. Now, Conan's going to be square because his face is always supposed to be big and broad and all that sort of. But it doesn't work for some of the other characters. But honestly, I do like the interior art. I just don't like the color scheme too much. I think the inks bring it down, even though they're well done. I just don't like the color scheme. So, like this, and this final panel looks really good too. I like this, his brooding, dark face, because Conan's not going to be smiling and all that. That's not what he does. He's real dour. The only time he smiles is when he's getting loaded on mead. So, yeah, it works throughout. It's nothing too stand out, except for a couple of the action scenes are really good. But there's no like epic sweeping vista kind of picture. I'd love to see a picture of him, like just his back superimposed across a big plains of battle or something. I think that'd be such a great shot for him, especially because there's a couple big battles in this book. Once again, like the cover, I think kind of middle of the road. I would actually rate this higher than the cover, except for I don't like the ink work inside too much, so it brings it down again. So I'm gonna give it the same exact scores I gave the cover. I'm gonna give it 2.5.
2.5. It was better than the cover, but he gave it the same as the cover.
You gave it the same. I guess it wasn't
Yeah, it's just,
better enough.
it was just a little too colorful inside. That's what brought it down. I like the art actually a little bit better inside because most of it's a little farther away, in all honesty. And I like the action poses and all that. Everything looked pretty natural inside as far as action goes. I just didn't like the color scheme too much. Like too many bright reds and yellows. It just didn't work in that kind of primeval land, you know. The cold gray north is how it's always described in the book, and I guess my mind always just goes back there. I should probably give it some credit because it's a comic. I mean, they got to put color in there for people, but I just like it. A little more muted tones. I think would have served it so much better.
All right. So 2.5 from the Brain Trust, Mr. Genome. Serenity now.
Breathe, Dave, breathe.
I'm going to go to my other dubious judge here, and I'm going to go Mr. 84, the Comic Head Master. What did you feel about Barry Windsor-Smith's internal art?
Mr. Barry Windsor-Smith's internal, and I gotta say, I'm not super familiar with. I mean, I obviously know of him, and I know he has legendary status, but I don't think I've read a lot of stuff with his work in it. So,
Early X-Men, some Avengers, maybe you run into those.
Yeah, I never paid much attention anyway. So it was cool to go through this and like kind of really dig into what he's doing. You know, this page, this book starts and ends with tremendous pages. I loved the first page, and I loved the last page. I thought he did a good job bookending this thing. Great. I warmed up to. I still am not crazy about you know, the way he's drawn necessarily. A little beefier, I suppose, is what I would have liked to see. But you know what? It wasn't as much of an issue to me as I started reading the book. Once I get that they're trying to draw a young Conan, so I get it. If we're doing like teenage Conan, fine. But it still rubs me a little the wrong way. I'm not a big fan of the helmet that they don for him, that two bullhorn helmet. But there's great like dynamic poses, like this one. This one was one of my favorites. That one there, and the way he crashes down on the dudes. That's all great work. This one here, when he's tackling the demon, that's a great pose. But then there's some that are not so great, you know, some missteps. Like I feel like this one, when he's like kind of throwing, I think he's throwing the gem at this point here. I feel like that was a lackluster pose. And right on the other page is another one, the way he's jumping off with the gal. I feel like that, you know, was a bit of a misstep. So I feel like he didn't have a total command of body poses. The colors at first threw me off because I wasn't expecting it with this book, with a Conan book. But I warmed up to it. You know, I didn't expect the Conan book to be super bright and kind of funky colors, because he does it a lot, like bright green, solid background on this, and which usually I'd give a strike for not rendering a background and being potentially lazy. Bright red here, bright green there. But you know what? It's funky. It looks cool. I was into it. I don't think he did a. Oh, I have to point out my one thing that I really didn't like. I don't like his shading technique. You can see the way he shades Conan's arm here and the way he shades the damsel. It's not even really cross-hatching. It's just this line technique that he does, and I don't dig it. Just either ink it or cross-hatch it differently. I did not like the shading technique. So again, it was some hits and misses. I liked it better. You know, I warmed up to it a little more than I did at my first impression with the cover, and I gave it a 3.5 inside.
3.5. Give you a little forgiveness on that one. Now, my turn here. I'm gonna, you know, I particularly do like the interior art. One that, like, I'm thinking back. This is again early Barry Windsor-Smith, but man, like every pose that, every panel that he does conveys some sort of action with Conan. That's one of his best things. Like Conan is never standing still. He is never, hanging out just having a chat. I mean, even when he's chatting with people, it almost looks like he's vibrating or he's looking around. Like, there's always a lot of action going on in these things. I was never, yeah, I got to agree with you a little bit on the inking. Dan Atkins, kind of, I don't like that, the way he shades it, like what Kenny was talking about, where it's on his chest there and he has that weird shading and it makes it look like he's got this big hairy chest and belly, but of course he doesn't. However, like I can't, fault Barry's stuff. It's just so much action and the colors don't bother me. I mean, this is very much Bronze Age colors. When I open up a Bronze Age comic book, I expect to see this sort of coloring. Another thing I think Barry did really, really well is that he has to convey all of this violence inside of here, and guys using swords and axes and demons with claws and stuff, but he is not allowed to draw a drop of blood in this book. Comic code will not allow him to draw up like big gory scenes and stuff like that. This is 1970. This is the comic code authority is in full swing. They still haven't, totally relaxed their rules. Like the stuff that they have now in comic books, they could never do at this point. The comic book would be outright banned from shelves or some other thing would happen to it. So I think Barry does a really great job of conveying all this violence around Conan without drawing any blood, too. Yeah, there's a few of these scenes that are a little bit lazy, but there's some really, really great scenes. I mean, it goes all the way up to drawing space scenes in it, right? And I mean, I think Gino gave, what's his name? The guy that has a hard time with the feet.
Liefeld.
Liefeld. I think Gino gave Liefeld a 2.5 on his interior, and so I can't believe he would even put that grade down there. Barry Windsor Smith and Liefeld in the same thing. And yeah, but I personally everything. There's no just blank backgrounds. Everything's got fire in it, or conveying some sort of action, or some sort of energy, or space scenes like. And every pose is action, action, all the way through this thing, action. There's always something happening, especially with Conan. So again, over inked in certain spots and that weird inking style like Kenny was talking about did kind of draw me away from it. There is a couple little not so great anatomy stuff here from Barry. I don't like the face on this guy. But overall, still a great interior. And I ended up giving the interior a 4.
4, very nice.
4 from the Miracle Man.
Very nice.
Yes, so I think 4 is a reasonable number. Who's my best friend in the show? Who's the guy that's on board with me here? That's the man, Medarog, Roger. Please tell me what you think, sir, of the interior.
Now I'm scared because now the pressure's on, but I might escape with my head here. Let's see. First of all,
keep in mind, I will fly to where you live.
Okay, that's what I was afraid of. Okay, so we're back to the Hyborian Age, I tell you. I wanted to show a lot of people in the chat are seeing your copy there, Dave, and the True Believers, and it's a lot brighter than my newsprint copy. So I wanted to kind of show a little bit here of what my copy looks like. And Genome, I think you're onto something. That True Believer, if I read that, I would have the same opinion. It is way too bright for, this is like early spring, I'm assuming, because there's not snow on the ground, but there is in the mountains or up on the foothills. So to me, that the color scheme is actually not bad. There's kind of muted greens. There's the browns from the rock faces. And look, this panel here is really good. He's swinging that sword. with the right hand. And boy, I tell you, wouldn't you like to see it just a little splatter of blood coming off of that chest instead of the the lattice here of the inker? I would, but again, that's not Barry's fault, so I'm not taking that away from him. I like the recoil there. Yeah, he has to make it somewhat colorful, because if he makes everything a muted gray and brown and and this these really deep skin tones, then the art is not really going to be showcased here. I agree on the helmet. It's a little corny, and plus he gets dropped by one of those demon things, and that thing must be like a skull cap in with super glue, because that thing does not move, which is kind of weird. But Dave is on. This is a frenetic comic book. There's constant motion, constant action. There's poses. Look at this wrestling pose here, Kenny. I'm sure it looks like almost like a half Simon there. What do you call it when you have the guy in the back?
Yeah,
half Nelson. There you go. Right, there you go. I'm sorry, I'm not a wrestling guy, but I can recognize it, right? And look at the face of this guy. When he's saying, "Hey, don't call me friend." Remember, this is dog eat dog. Conan is essentially a mercenary here. Okay, so they could turn on you in a second, and he conveys the action very well. He conveys the emotions very well. Here, all of a sudden, they have a little bro moment, right? Even though they miscolored his hair here, that should be blonde, and it's kind of a yucky, sand colored. But I agree. This is well done, especially for the genre. Remember, this is the first one of this genre, really. The colors in the background, they have a good variety. Usually, I would have a problem with that, but it really brings out those, somewhat grayish and somewhat maudlin tones. Look at the lighting effect here. Where the rays are coming, or the power is coming from inside of a cavern. So there's obviously no light otherwise than the light source. Just very well done, I thought. Yeah, the inking a little heavy-handed here and there, and I do not like that technique either, Kenny. It's somewhat distracting, actually. I like this one here when he's coming down off this crag. He is just like full bore. He is just frenetic motion, 100%. That's why he's skinny, because the man is probably just goes through energy like you and I go through water. Okay, so again, very well done. Again, some problems with the facial expressions here and there. Yeah, okay, I'm done. But honestly, I thought this was really well done, and I agree with 100% with Dave. I give it a 4.
All right, still my buddy. All right.
It's not friends off.
Not friends off yet. I'm looking at you, Genome. Anyways, what I would like to know is what the chat feels about the interior art. Give us your grades, please. Send them into the chat. We'll get them all added up, and we'll see what the total is at the end. All right.
Man, it's crazy with when Roger was showing the inside of the newsprint one, the color.
That's
a different.
different.
Dang,
very different.
It's so much brighter in my issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I can
slick
take the
paper.
original look of it there, I'd probably bump it up to a 3, just because I only took off half a point because of the brightness of the stuff before, and I figured that was kind of a problem with the paper stock and all that, and the new brightening process they're going to use. So I'll go ahead and bump mine up to a 3, just because I got the seats in the original panels there. So
We're getting lots of
even
boards.
the shading seems to be just a little bit better on the newsprint one. On that. The shades are, like you said, are just way too bright for that environment at that time of year.
Well, yeah, I was surprised because I haven't opened my issue number 1 in years and years, so you forget, right? And I just picked up that Tree Believers copy. Yeah, it looks like we're getting lots of chat grades in here.
We got the chat stacked and jacked.
We got 2 grades from Tony Sanders, one for the reprint and one for my copy.
I too.
Isn't
I'll tell
that
you,
just like Tony Sanders to come up with that kind of dynamic?
Yeah, because he has a split personality. He's the Tone and Vincent McSand, so he's got two mentalities there. Ben Compton popped up in the chat over the last grading round, as did From Heroes to Icons, who's a Graders Notes regular in the chat.
He's loyal fan here.
Yeah, man, it's always good to see
Great to see our loyal fans. You guys are just awesome, man. You have no idea what this means to us, man. Kenny, you ready? You got the abacus, you got the calculator, you got the.
Oh yes. Hold on. Let me get
You
my.
got the Windows 95, that little pad they had in the corner, you know.
Yep, it's locked and loaded.
Locked and loaded. Okay. Unruly Simeon comes in with a 4. Yeah, Dave. Tuma Comics 4. Biggie with a 4. I see a pattern. Hialeah 4. Heroes to Icons 4. Comic Collector 3. Ooh. That's like that $50 bill you throw away because it's not 100. Steven Spock with a 4. Don Mastodon 3.5. Bake the Snake with a 3. Going off the newsprint, Russ says 4. Ben Compton 4.5. And then Tony Sanders, I don't know how you want to do this one. 4.5 for the book and the reprint 3.5. I don't know how you want to do that one.
I'll call it 4.5.
All right. And Boatwright. Hey, Boatwright, how you doing? 3.5. A great artist in his own right, also Mr. Boatwright. Okay, I think that's it.
Okay.
Awesome. Lots of good.
While we're
grades.
tabulating, make sure everyone is subbing each other up if you haven't already done so.
That's right. Very good.
And as you would have probably predicted, 4 for the inside art.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. Come on.
As always, the chat is never wrong.
Chad is the best grader we got.
Oh, man. We can't hold a candle to these guys. Come on.
All right. So let's take a step back from the art for a minute. Let's talk about some of the writing, some of the storylines here, and talk about the story. And this time, I wanted to lead off with my good buddy Kenny. Kenny, Mr. 84, genius that you are. Tell me about how you feel about this story. I know you're a literary genius, so pins and needles on what you got to say about it.
That's true. Well, let me tell you something, brother. No. So Roy Thomas, I respect Roy Thomas quite a bit. I think, overall summation is that it's a pretty standard Conan tale. Introduce Conan, maybe give you a little example that he's a badass. He gets mixed up with some sorcery some way or another. A damsel who usually means trouble one way or another. He whoops some ass and he keeps it moving. That's in broad strokes kind of what happens here. The language, as like with a lot of Conan books, I think is, I don't know what's the, Medarod probably knows the best word to describe it. I always call it like flowery.
Ostentatious, shall we say?
Yeah, ostentatious, kind of old timey, which I'm cool with. I think that fits the Conan lingo fine. But I feel like for a number 1 issue, they would have benefited from maybe establishing a little more on who Conan is for people. Because if it's, number 1 issue in Marvel Comics, you're bringing them to this format for the first time, and there's very little time spent with Conan. Like I'd like to know what's going on in his head a little more. Like I would have liked to seen narration blocks potentially with Conan's thoughts on stuff versus the omniscient narrator just kind of calling the action. Because by the end of the issue, I don't think you really walk away with a sense of who this dude Conan is and what he's really about. He just comes off like a sellsword from the beginning. The guy that they include, this blonde fella that he links up with, he meets up with him. He dies mid-issue, and there's really no stakes to it. It didn't really matter that he died, and I feel like that was kind of a missed opportunity. I would have said, why not? Like nothing in the story seems like they set up anything to go into a next issue. It's just straight episodic, which isn't a terrible thing, but I think for a number 1 issue, I would have left a little more of a through line for readers to follow along. I did dig the female, what the female had going on, because he basically Conan screwed her over. Like it was really, it threw me off. I wasn't expecting the turn from the female of by him destroying the gem that the sorcerer guy had. You would think in normal storylines he would have like freed the damsel from the evil sorcerer, but really he screws her over and she reverts back into a demon and has to go back to like hell basically, or a demon type landscape. And she's like, you fucked me over, Conan. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that coming. I thought that was clever. It was like your standard cardboard cutout of what would happen in scenes like that. So that was cool. But again, I think there's some missed opportunities on fleshing out who Conan is and what he was about with the first issue. So it didn't knock my socks off. I gave the inside a 3. It was a little above average.
A little above average for Mr. Thomas's writing.
Yeah.
Very good. So let me have my opinion. Right? I know what you're saying there, Kenny. Like when you're reading the book, one of the things that I know about this book, if you know anything about Robert E. Howard, Robert E. Howard died in like the late 1930s. He committed suicide. I think he was only about 30 years old or so, and he had written a few Conan books and stuff like that. And his estate wasn't too happy about Marvel Comics getting these publishing rights from some other way or whatever that had gone on, and they wouldn't let them use Robert's stories. They wouldn't let him use Howard's stories. They would just so Roy Thomas had to come up with his completely own stories in this thing. One of the good things about this book is it, like you're saying, they didn't flesh out Conan a lot, which I liked. I don't like it when you get a first issue and they ram everything about the character down your throat in the first issue. And then you're left going, well, what's going to happen in issue 2? Because I pretty much know this guy's life story already, right? So it's good if you keep reading the series, more and more of Conan's backstory is revealed. They don't shove it all the way down your throat in this one. I also do like that they don't do it by having Conan tell you his story. They use this gem and they kind of see into his past and stuff like that. So that was a kind of a unique way of going over his past, presenting a little bit about who Conan is. I mean, you don't need a lot of backstory for Conan. He is this guy with a sword and he's out to do sword things, right? Like he's out to fight. That's, Conan in a nutshell. He's basically, that's it. You don't need, oh, he went to University of such and such and took, mathematics of the sword or anything like that. No, right? So I do find it quite wordy at points and unnecessarily so. I do like a few of the twists in here in this book. Looking into the future part was cool, right? And there's like a little bit of a twist on that sort of idea. But yeah, it is quite wordy. I know he's trying to get through an origin / beginning of an issue story, but I think he could have cut down on the wordiness just slightly. Overall, a good Bronze Age story. A fine piece of writing by Roy Thomas. Definitely could have gotten better by using a Howard story. Now, I believe they did get the rights to actually use Howard stories, but not until like the mid-20s or so of the issues. So, coming up with your very own Conan story, but still being good and still keeping to the whole real spirit of Conan. So yeah, I gave Roy's story a 3.5. A little bit off for being too wordy.
3.5.
3.5. And that will bring us to our next panelist, whose opinion I, gain more and more respect every time we go through these graders' notes. The elder of the group, Mr. Metarog.
Well, thank you there, Dave. You could leave off the elder part there next
I
time.
could have. I didn't, but
although it's
I
100% true. You are like Conan. You're brutally honest, right? So.
Hey, I gotta do it. You're the only guy older than me, so.
Yeah, okay, that's right, man. And I wear that as a badge of honor. Trust me. Again, probably Genome knows more about the pulps. I've read a few of them, and paperback form, and yeah, this is a fairly different Conan from I think the original concept that Howard had. Remember, he created Cole first as a fairly different. He was more of a ruler, and he kind of adapted a lot of his stories to Conan because the Cole ones weren't selling. But I'll get to that into the concept part, right? But so yeah, this is a fairly different Conan, but I agree with Dave. The spirit of Conan is here, if not the technical similarities. So I give Thomas credit for the spirit of Conan that he's putting here. It is a little wordy at points, but again, when you're trying to introduce somebody in a first issue, you're trying to not only introduce who they are, but you're trying to introduce what they are. And obviously he's savage. He's somebody you do not want to trifle with. He's honest, but he is very determined and he's very focused. Notice at one point he was going to let that guy be killed because he had done his job, but he thought, well, why am I going to let that happen and have more enemies against me? Again, very cunning. Something that you have to sort of look at when you look at what Conan is and what his ultimate goals are, right? And then again they do a lot of Robert E. Howard stuff. He believed in barbarism. He didn't believe in civility. If you're an enemy, you're dead. That's just the long and the short of it. So even though these guys retreat, they go back and they slaughter them. Okay, that's just what happens. And I think that is to the spirit of Robert E. Howard. The sorcery aspect I think was pretty well done. Like Kenny said, that's a nice little twist. Essentially because of he is so focused, he couldn't see past, he didn't listen to her, really. But if he did, he would have been the one sent to hell. So it worked out in the end here. A nice little twist. Again, I would have liked it to be a little bit more, like I think Kenny mentioned, more, what his thoughts were and the intensity that he has. That didn't shine through all that much. It did through his actions, but not so much through the exposition. So I would have liked that to sort of get there a little bit quicker. And again, that little flashback scene where they show, his future and Conan, and Cole and the spaceship, that was a convenient vehicle, I think, that they used to sort of shorten the origin part and sort of a portent of things to come. So again, clever, but to me, I would have rather had more of the intensity of Conan in here than just this one story sort of showing his naivete and his singular focus. There's many more aspects to him than that. So because of that, but I still think it's still a solid story. I think the spirit of Conan is in here. So I do also give it a 3.5.
There we go. Great minds think alike. And you and I have been thinking a lot alike tonight.
Well, just so happens tonight. Yeah, some nights no. But
okay, so moving on to the next one. Oh wait, no. I guess we gotta make sure everybody chimes in.
The fifth. We got another guy here yet to talk.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So, Genome, what do you think?
That ringing endorsement there. I like that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the story. This is insert blank Conan story. This is basically if you had a template for a Conan story, you could just plug this in there and it would fit and check all the boxes. You got usually almost every Conan story will start off with him slaughtering some humans, some sort of battle. I mean, it is Conan. And then there'll be some other thing to catch his interest, usually something to steal or a fair-haired wench or something like that to chase after or lust after. And then they introduce some supernatural element, and then after that is won over, then it gets back to Conan riding off into the sunset, if you will. Now, that doesn't detract from the story. I mean, that's what I expect out of a Conan story. I don't want him, learning to drive buses or, I don't want him to become civilized. I want him to stay Conan the Barbarian. That's why I was kind of turned off a little bit when he turned to a king in the later books. But they actually handled it pretty well with that because he was still a battle king. He would get out there and he was his own bodyguard, and he got out there at the front of the armies like a good general should, But so the story inside, like I said, it's kind of cookie cutter. I agree with Dave to a point. Conan is a man of few words. He's not going to be thinking everything he does. He just does it. He works on instinct for the most part. So I kind of like how that kept him in the dark a little bit, or kept the reader in the dark about what he was all about. The only problem is, like, they gave the two buffoon bad guys, you knew way more about them than you did about Conan by the end of the book. And that's kind of a crime. So they could have gave them some less dialogue, and they could have gave Conan just a little bit. Even the narrator could have done some of the work for him, Conan, without regard for his life, rushes in as he does in all his passive exploits or something. Just a little something to give you some hint of what he's all about. Now, his actions do kind of spell out what he's all about. Like for instance, when the demon kills the dude, he just rushes in and attacks the damn thing. He's like, I'm going to die, or this thing's going to die. I love how they portray him like that. That's how Conan is. He doesn't take time to consider what's going on. Usually, unless there's a big battle going on, he just rushes in and gets it done, So I kind of dig that aspect of it. I did like the twist at the end with the demoness, and I kind of like it. And this kind of comes through in some of the older books too, is the bad demon and otherworldly beings usually don't like where they come from. They'd rather stay in the earthly realm. So they kind of work that in here. Like, she obviously doesn't want to go back to basically a realm of torment is where she lives and was spawned. But so that was pretty cool. There was something really egregious thing in here, though, that I couldn't stand. In this panel, this Olav guy, the leader or whoever it was, the other warrior, calls him boy. Conan would not let another man call him boy. He's let other people call him youth before, but he would have cracked this guy's skull if he'd have called him a boy in front of other people. There's just no doubt about it. And he just kind of doesn't say anything. Doesn't even seem to bother him. Conan takes guff from no man. That's what Conan does. So that was probably the most egregious part of the book for me. But I mean, other than that, it's just a solid tale. Good sword and sorcery, loincloth and spells kind of story. So, I mean, solid just through and through. I give it a 3. Nothing too spectacular, but there's nothing wrong with it at all. So, yeah, keep up the good work.
Nice.
All right.
Very nice.
So, those are our grades for our story. What do you think, chat? Let us know what you think of the story. If you had a True Believers copy, if you remember it from the 70s, buying it off the rack, if you don't even really care, but you just listen to what we were saying and you're going to have an opinion on that basis, it's all good. Give us your opinion. Give us your number. Chat it up.
Personally, I'm disappointed. We've gone through 3 rounds of critiques, and I didn't get one serviceable from you, Genome.
Oh, I'm saying it. Don't worry.
I mean,
It's serviceable.
I mean,
Technically speaking, if any part of the book would have got serviceable, it'd probably been the interior art, just because I thought it was good, but nothing too spectacular. I think the story was a little better and serviceable, so I could have worked it in there, but I was too busy espousing about the inks. So,
I just get good analysis is Genome. Genome's not all starry-eyed.
No.
Part of the problem too is it can be a little detrimental to be such a big Robert Howard fan and a big fan of the original story so much, because you kind of go in there, it's like reading a good novel, and you go in there and the movie's not going to be nearly as good as the book, at least in your head, so you kind of go in there a little bit jaundiced against, and a little bit jaded against it. So I try to take that out of consideration too. But
yeah, I will say I went into it wanting to like it more than I ended up liking it,
Yeah, because I love the rest of the run. Like, I've done videos. In fact, I did a Conan video a couple weeks ago, like on Conan 170. Like the 100s, the whole 100 run was just amazing. As soon as Bassema took it over, it was just incredible. And they really kept the flavor of the character together. They did make him a little too chatty though, and that's where I agree with Dave. I think they should have kept him a little more stoic, a little more of the strong silent type.
Yeah, it should have been more, like you said, he's a like on instinct. He is on passion. You know, it could have been like a thought. You know, just like, oh, you know, look what's happening over there. Boom, and he's there in a flash. And when he saw the woman, you know, he would perhaps have some more erotic thoughts. But of course, in a comic, you have to be careful with the comic code there. But you know, if you go into this thinking it's a Robert E. Howard story, you're going to be very disappointed because it's very different.
Yeah, it is. It's a Roy Thomas story.
It's a Roy Thomas story. That's right.
Yeah, and and Conan, like I said, is very stoic. I like the way they did it in the original Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. If you watch that movie, Conan, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, doesn't have a line for the first 22 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't even talk, and he's the main character. You know what I mean?
You just look at his eyes.
And that's how I've always felt Conan has to be. Like he's just kind of like he's got his own opinions, which is generally if any of these wizards get out of hand, I'm going to kill them all. Right? That's that's his MO. Or any of these guys get out of hand, I'm going to kill them with my sword. But that's he's not thinking in his head about other things. Like he is the barbarian. Man.
He's action personified.
Exactly.
But Roy Thomas. It's sort of like a leopard can't change its stripes, and Roy Thomas is an exposed. He likes exposition. He likes to be out there, and he likes to have his characters, verbalize, and so that's what you get.
Cool.
All right, let's see if I think the chat's about done with this. Okay, you ready, Kenny?
Yeah, just about. I was trying to help out my boy Gray Man. He was asking for a Crom count, and I just got through the book, and this whole issue, you end up with a Crom count of 3 by Crom. You get 3 times.
By Crom. Yeah. That's something that they kept from Robert E. Howard.
Yeah.
But
Abacus is out, sir.
Abacus is out. Okay. I think the first grade is our buddy Biggie Shack with the Big Four. Biggie Shack really likes this story. That would make sense for Biggie. This is a Biggie story, right? What great guy. Hialeah comes in with a 3. Jason, Heroes to Icons 3. Gray Man says he's never read it. Unruly Simeon 4. He just reread it. Steven Spock 3.5. Tim 2.5. He says it didn't sway me. Mastodon Don comes in with a 3.5 and Russ with a 3.
Who's Tim? I don't know.
Tim is a comic collector. I'm sorry.
Oh, comic collector. Oh, nice.
Yep. Yeah,
cool.
Sorry.
Collector of the man. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so boom. Let me do a little math here. And by Crom, the book is at. Let's see. I guess that would make it a 3.5. 3.5 for the story in the book.
Once again, the chat is never wrong.
Pat and I are wrong. All right. So, moving on. The concept itself. What kind of book is this? Is it a brainy book? Is it a barbarian book? Is it a hack and slasher? Well, the concept, I want to give the majority of the concept does have to go to Howard, right? He's the guy who invented Conan. However, like I said, they wouldn't allow him to use Robert E. Howard stories. They wouldn't, Roy Thomas really changed a whole bunch of things, but the overall concept of this lone barbarian, best warrior, with the sword, fighting his way through, magic and demons, especially magic, because that's kind of like his dichotomy, right? Where, he's all brawn and magic's all mysticism, and he doesn't understand it, and he can't use it, and so the overall concept based on the comic book, it's a real departure from what superheroes, like stuff that Roy Thomas was writing at the time. I mean, I know there was a few barbarian books before this one? Or was this guy like there was no?
No, this is the first that I know of.
Yeah. So I mean, you
Maybe
got
Khazar. Was Khazar around before him?
Khazar was around, but would you consider Khazar like a
Yeah,
barbarian? And I don't think Khazar had his own series before Conan did, right? Like Khazar's own personal series didn't come out till later in the 70s.
yeah. He made an appearance in the X-Men, and then he shared billing and other comics, but there are some similarities, but I would not consider that sword and sorcery in any way. No.
No, not really, right? I think Khazar is a different kind of like he's more of that Tarzan guy,
Yeah,
rather than a barbarian, right? So being on point for that, and being putting themselves out there, like David said, nobody really knew who Conan was at this point. So for them to do an entire comic book based on him, I think really was a bit of a stretch for Marvel, a bit of a risk for Marvel. Roy Thomas taking on Barry Windsor Smith was a relatively new artist. And yeah, overall, like in concept and stuff, I think it was pretty brave. So for the bravery of it, I'm going to give it a 4.
Brave 4.
Brave 4. And I would like to know what you think, Roger. What did you feel the concept of this book?
Well, let me just say that I think this is a brilliant concept. And I'll tell you why. Because when they relaxed the comics code right around this time, and I give Marvel credit right around this era, they had a lot of foresight. They saw that Universal Monsters had an audience, that horror could be manipulated and be Marvelized, I'm saying in quotes, to be an effective comics medium. And they looked at other avenues. They just didn't stay pat. They didn't say, superheroes, a little bit of westerns, a little bit of spy. They took a chance, but I think this paid off huge, absolutely huge, to get this license and to be able to tell these stories, even though the character is quite different, But they also picked they got all the Robert E. Howard properties. They got Cole, they got Solomon Kane. Marvel saw an opportunity and they took it by the throat and they ran with it. Okay, a whole new genre with an incredibly imaginative and just novel character that we hadn't seen in the comics, and the transition from the pulps doesn't always work. Okay. There are many pulp characters that died in comics, right? But this one flourished in the 4-color medium. And like you said, Dave, they took frontline people here. Roy Thomas, okay, who was took over a lot of the main team books and had a really good reputation even back then. And you're right, Barry Smith was fairly new, but they could see talent when they saw it, when they knew when he drew, they knew that he was talented. And he did a beautiful, his art got much better later on, by the way. His art in the teens is just perfect. Okay, just perfect for Conan. So to me, they hit a major league home run. Not quite a grand slam, and only because the other properties that they tried to bring in and some of the different ways that they tried to market it it didn't quite succeed. But it sprung into Savage Tales magazine, Savage Sword of Conan. It was just a blockbuster move by Marvel. And for all of this, I actually do better than Dave. I give this a 4.5.
Ooh, 4.5. That's quite the shining grade for that one. Bedrog must have really liked that story to give it that kind of grade. Yeah,
I like the concept of Conan a lot. From a marketing and historically, it is just a brilliant move.
Yeah, no, it's a great concept. I mean, Who doesn't want to read about like ancient Samaria stuff?
Yeah. Come on.
And I was just reading the chat, and Unruly Simeon was saying that there may have been some sort of Whitman barbarian in the mid 60s, but he doesn't remember the name. And then someone was mentioning Tor, but I think Tor was a little bit later. I think he was a DC Comics guy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might. I know there was a Mighty Samson. Was
Yeah. But
don't-
yeah, that's kind of
He's
he
not
was
too barbarian, though.
And the fact that he can't remember it tells you mountains of information because
Exactly.
everybody knows Conan.
Yeah. All right, but let's move on to our next grader. David, you've got a better grasp on the concept. I'm gonna clean the slate for this episode. I'm gonna pretend like I didn't hear what you said before and give you the mic. How do you feel about the overall concept, sir?
Well, if we're talking about holding grades against us, do I need to bring up Aliens vs. Predator again? I see an awful lot of ones on there.
I
didn't
need
slap
to
a
bring
one
up
on anything on this
Aliens
book.
vs. Predator. When you've given this
Oh, boy.
2.5 and you're recommending Aliens vs. Predator.
I more than doubled your lowest score before on some of those, but hey, and that was my lowest. But in all honesty, thank you, my fellow Dave. I will probably increase my status in your eyes just a little bit after I give you what's going to be my highest grade by far, actually, of all of the different categories. So let's talk about Conan here real fast. First off, Marvel had balls to do this. I mean, back then, this is not the kind of there was no anti-hero really back then, right? But this is not the kind of hero story that they had in comic books back then. They were saccharine sweet, they were by the numbers kind of affairs, very black and white. Most people didn't die. I mean, it was pretty rare when someone died. He killed, a gross of people per issue. So, I mean, that alone was, and especially with all the censorship they had back then, that took a cast iron set of balls to put this license to paper. So, congrats to them. The other thing is they could have just ripped off Conan. They could have made their own barbarian, gave his name. I'm Kangor or whatever, the barbarian. They could just ran with that. And they could have completely plagiarized the stories, and who would have known? I mean, back then, comics weren't talked about in literary circles. So, it wouldn't even got back to the folks, or the family. So they went out and they got an established, basically unknown character for the most part and ran with it. So, it's a great concept. The concept of Conan kind of lends itself perfectly to the comic book medium. Short, condensed stories. Yes, the books have something of a linkage to each other from him being a vagabond to a king, but it works so well. Short stories that can be illustrated into a book, and they don't need a lot of dialogue or even world building for Conan. He just travels around and kills people and gets his treasure and his wenches, and you can do that ad nauseum, and they did for like 200 issues or whatever. It was a brilliant concept, and they didn't half-ass it. They put decent artists and good writers on it. Really, I say decent, but they put spectacular artists, especially later on in the series. It was just so different than anything else that was around out there. They took. I don't know. They took a big chance there, I think. And I think I don't know how much money it really made them. I mean, it did run for a long time. I don't think it was a huge smashing success or anything. But yeah, I just love the chance they took on this. And it showed a lot of foresight on their part because it obviously spawned a whole slew of other books and things like that. So yeah, there's nothing to complain about on the concept here. I would give it a 5. But it's pretty hard for me to give a 5 for anything, basically. But other than the fact that maybe they had to kind of make up Conan a little bit as they went along until they got some more rights to the stories, kind of detracted just a little bit from it. And the medium doesn't lend itself perfectly to Conan because he's so ultra violent they can't show it. Even when they started easing restrictions, it wasn't until much later that he started hacking off limbs and all that stuff too. And they didn't really show him, completely immersed in bloodbaths like he is in the books. So that's not really the fault of the character. It's kind of just, that's just the medium it is in. But excellent concept, easily the best part of the book, and I was so happy to see Marvel make a precursor to the Punisher, the anti-hero, so much earlier than that. So yeah, I give that a 4.5.
Oh, you Punisher fans will hold on to the merest string, you know, of continuity. You know what I mean? Conan to the Punisher. Come on.
And and the other thing that's good about Conan in comics is, he's not going to probably, but he could die at any time. He's just a man.
Yeah.
So every issue is a real danger to him. Every wizard is danger. Every sword thrust is a danger to him. He's not Superman, and he's got no backup. He's by himself out there. So I just love it. I mean, every now and then he has a friend tag along or whatever, but for the most part, he's a lone vagabond. He's a lone Ronin. So I just love the concept. Love the character.
And that's why Genome. That's why he translated to the magazine so well, because they had no comics code, so you could show a lot of blood. You can show a lot of that ultra violence that the comic had to mute. And if you read those magazines, man, they are violent.
Yeah, they're way more bloody. But yeah, they didn't have to follow the Comic Code Authority because they were a comic magazine, not a comic book.
That's right.
Like this lovely gem right here. Oh, this is such a good one. Number 101.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Look at this.
all in black and white too. There's limbs everywhere, boobs hanging out. It's just insane, man.
Robert E. Howard would be proud of that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, before you guys run off with it, we still have another grader to chime in on the rest of the concept, and everybody loves him. Mr. 84, how do you feel the concept of this book played out?
Concept of the Conan. And let me just give a welcome and a shout out to a couple new entrants into the chat. DS Comics and Gene Paul Ace Peter, aka GPAP. Happy to have those guys in the chat dropping knowledge as always. James Howard and my buddy Epicurean I Relief just entered the squared circle. Good to see you guys. Concept for this Conan #1 issue in Marvel is definitely a high point. I think I agree. Bold move, right? Because in the era where, fresh off the 60s was, they just launched all the classic Marvel characters we know today. Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Avengers, Hulk, you name it. So it was, Marvel was doing its thing with superheroes and tights and the whole thing. And to start a series with Conan the Barbarian, I think was a bold move. And I think it's interesting. I never really thought about it the way Genome just mentioned it. They really could have just created their own barbarian character. Like nothing really kept them from doing that. But the fact that they chose to, adapt an existing character that had already its own kind of mythology and storyline built into it, props to that. I think that was a good move. I feel like it probably gave a little more weight to the character. I don't know at the time in 1970 if that rang bells to anyone when they saw Conan on the rack. I don't think so, but I'm sure a lot of the literary fans probably did get a kick out of that. So I think that was a cool move. Conan himself, of course, lends himself great to comics. He's a yoked badass who gets in adventures, hack and slash, the whole bit. So great. I like that they gave it a good run too. What is it, like 270 something issues? I think this thing almost went to like 300 issues.
275.
How many?
275.
275. So
what's annuals in giant size?
What's annual giant size?
So shit, man, they gave it a good run. That's all stuff. And they put, at the time, some of the, some real heavyweights, Barry Windsor Smith and Roy Thomas. So I like that they gave the book respect, and it was a good change of pace, I would think, from the superhero genre. And the one thing that, is a little bit of a knock on it, I guess, concept wise, is that, and I guess it's because of Comics Code, like you guys were saying, but it is, a bit of a neutered version of the Conan story and the Conan character, which takes a little bit away from it. I mean, hey, Comics Code or not, it is what it is. You are getting a little watered down version of Conan, But is what it is. So yeah, man, I think you guys all summed it up pretty well. This thing gets a 4 on the concept from me. Very strong. Definitely happy that they brought Conan on board to Marvel, and I'm happy that he's back too. I've been digging the new Conan stuff.
Yeah, I've been digging the new
So
Conan.
I'm glad Marvel got. Yeah, good shit.
Savage Avengers.
So that was a strong 4 from Kenny.
Strong 4.
You redeem yourself a little bit in my eyes there. Same with you, David. We're all friends again. Don't sweat it out tonight. I'm not gonna fly out there and do something you would regret tomorrow. Anyway, we're gonna move along and we're gonna see what the chat felt about the concept of this book. So please give us a concept grade if you're out there in chat land talking to one another, listening to this video cast. Please give us your chat grade, the most important grade of Graders Notes.
Oh yeah, I think the chat's going to be a fan of the concept of our boy Conan.
Yeah, I tell you, you don't even have to be a fan of Conan the character to appreciate the concept of what they did with him. Like I said, they took a chance. They took a huge gamble on this, and they did it justice. And like you said, it went on almost 300 issues, so it obviously worked. They just kind of went into an untapped market. They made their own market almost entirely out of this run. So that's very impressive on their part.
Well, not just 300 issues of this run, but all the Savage Sword magazines, all the new comic books they have now, there is literally thousands of Conan books out there.
Yeah, and they had the
with this one.
And then later on, they also launched some spin-offs, Call, King Conan, Red Sonja. The family tree grows from out of this this one issue in the future greatly, and still around today. So
I'm sure without this book, there wouldn't be a movie.
Well done.
Right, I'm sure without this book being published, there wouldn't have been an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
I'd probably have to agree with you there because, like I said, they were just basically bits of dusty lore that were sitting around in publisher's office. They weren't even like widely released books, Yeah. So yeah, most people didn't have any idea about them, and this probably brought things back somewhat to the mainstream at least, That
was his big breakout role too. Was Conan, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he had one like bodybuilding movie, but
yeah, he did Pumping Iron. The funny thing is a year after he did this movie, he went back and won Olympia again in what is considered probably the most controversial Mr. Olympia win outside of maybe the Franco Columbo second win. But
if you watch Conan the Barbarian, he is huge in that movie. Like he has had his bodybuilding weight in that movie. He is huge. And I know he did a few movies before that. He did one, Hercules and the Three Stooges, and they dubbed him over because his accent was too thick.
So bad, yeah.
He did Paint Your Red Wagon. He was in that.
Wow.
Was that Lee Marvin movie?
Lee Marvin, the musical.
Yeah.
You're really obscure stuff now, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. All right.
Schwarzenegger had done a few roles, but Conan the Barbarian was his big breakout action role.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
And I remember when Conan the Barbarian came into theaters, because I was not allowed to see it because I think they wanted to rate it X at the time because of the sex scenes and stuff in there. And my mom was like, "No way, you're going to go see that." Of course, because I was probably I can't even remember, younger than 10. Anyway, and I remember everybody thinking "Oh my God, this movie's so bad." But I mean, you watch it now and it's whatever. They can play this on cable TV.
Yeah, this is on Saturday afternoon TV now. Yeah.
Man, those are the best friends a kid could have back then. All the sword and sorcery movies that were coming around back then, because there was so much ample nudity too that it helped broaden the horizons of a young man.
Well, that's right. Pretty sure it's not my first boob in a.
That's one way of putting it.
Didn't Beastmaster have the huge orgy scene in it? I remember rewinding that one on VHS a few times.
Yeah.
But
all right, 84. You got your abacus out.
Yeah.
Our chat grades were.
All right, here we go. Unruly Simeon 4.5, Biggie Shack 4, Hialeah Comic Bro 4, Steven Spot coming in with a strong 5. Caleb showed up 4, Grayman 4, Mastodon 4, James Howard 4 for sure. DS 5. There's my buddy from the No Faces chat. And Jean Paul Ace Peter, Kiss comes in with a 5. And I think that's, oh, nope. And also Heroes to Icons coming in with a 5. Oh, this is going to be good, Dave.
Pretty high numbers there.
That's going to be good.
Yeah, we were walking away with, it was 4.4, which means we give it a 4.5.
Oh, yeah. That's a definite round.
Yeah, one of the highest chat grades, I think.
Yeah.
Graders
Yeah,
Notes
that's strong. Strong.
Yeah, I'm looking back through the older ones to see if any of the other ones kind of matched up. Actually, this seems to be the highest. The next closest one has been She-Hulk #1.
For what category?
For all of them. I'm looking at the overalls that we have so far.
Oh, okay.
Actually, looks like She-Hulk #1's a little bit higher than this one so far. Or no, actually, I wouldn't say it because She-Hulk #1 cover was 4, interior art was 5, concept was 4, story was 3.
We haven't done the overall yet.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying, but it was pretty close. So this one's got 2 4s and 4.5 and 3.5. So
I love that Genome has a historical record of Graders Notes on hand.
oh man, we're going back in time, baby. Right there. If there's one thing I like to make is spreadsheets. So bam, there's a simple one.
These will be on microfiche on your local library in the near future.
Yeah.
Historical document. Where were you, Graders Notes episode 8?
All right.
I was in the chat when they did Conan #1. You can say that to your kids.
That's great. So if you'll ever remember this even 3 days from now. Not a big deal. We're going to move on. We're going to hit our last category of the evening, the overall. Big summary. How do you feel art marrying with the story, with the writing, with the concept, and the cover that wraps it all together? Give me the overall, how you feel about it. And let us start with right back at the beginning. No, did we start with you this time, Roger? I've lost my place.
Yeah, we did.
Then we're going to start with Gino. Gino, tell us your overall opinion of this book.
All right. So as most of you probably have gleaned by now, I was not bowled over by the art. I just merely found it serviceable. There you go, Kenny. A little better than average, of course. A little better than average. I'm not knocking the art. It's not bad. Just a couple of things I didn't like in some of the portrayals of the characters. So mostly the way Conan was drawn, I wasn't a big fan of it. I do like the way he's portrayed as an action hero, though, and that's what he is. He is a lithe, moving panther and tiger wading through battle, untouchable by sword or spell. So the characterization of how he moves around is good. I just didn't like some of those more still shots and the close-ups of his face and all that. So the story was, pretty basic. A pretty basic Conan story with a twist, though. There was a twist at the end, which is kind of cool. And the concept was just incredible. So you take all that together, and unfortunately, the art kind of hurt the overall grade. I gave it 3.5, but it deserves a higher score than that. I'm just trying to be honest with how I'm looking at with today's eyes. But the book was so damn important, not just to Marvel, but basically the comics in general. It let the industry know that, hey, you can do something different, and you can take a genre that had been all but forgotten by all but the most diehard of pulp fans, and not just like Conan stories, just the sword and sorcery kind of genre and period, and it just created a whole renaissance about it. So this, you can't underestimate the importance this book actually had on revitalizing an industry. Look what it did in the 80s, late 70s and 80s. It just, like Dave was saying, it spawned movies, books, magazines. It goes on and on, cartoons eventually, and it's still on to this day somewhat, even though people haven't really done it much justice since the 80s, and they kind of steered away from it for the most part. I think they'll come back to it eventually. Unfortunately, the climate we live in now is not really good for these kind of movies and these kind of characters to be put on screen. Not in keeping them with their original intent. And I would rather see them not put on screen if they're going to be watered down. So, but that's not here nor there. I think the book is, I'd like to have this book myself in my collection. I'm pretty jealous of yours back there, actually, because I always liked the series when I was growing up, and I can still read. So the funny thing about these books is like we did New Warriors last time or time before, whatever it was, and it's hard to go back and read that book. It's not hard to go back and read a Conan book now. Conan book holds up to the adult reading much more than when they pander to the younger audience or whatever. New Warriors probably sold more in its first issue than Conan did in his entire run, but that doesn't make it a better book. This book is pretty good. I just think the art brought it down a few pegs. So I'm going to go ahead and give it 3.5. It probably deserves a 4 for just the influence it had on the overall genre itself. But I'm just going to keep it. I'm going to keep the book insular for the most part and just leave it at 3.5.
3.5 from Gino. All right, that's, acceptable, above average. I'll give you that one, David. Now we'd like to hear from you, Kenny. Kenny, tell us, how do you feel about the overall of this book?
Overall, so I usually do my overalls straight by the numbers, by averaging out what I have. Now, the cover, which I gave a 2.5, is kind of is the grade that has tanked my average grade. And keep in mind, people, with Grader's notes, what we do in this show is we're not grading the overall run or what the book went on to be or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
The point of this is we grab one single comic book issue and we dissect the hell out of one comic book issue. So for this particular book, the cover didn't get me. I think I'm so like my Conan is Buscema Conan, and it's that guy. That's the guy that I like to see when I'm thinking Conan. So this kind of like Tony said before, has the body of a Michael Phelps with a sword. The cover didn't knock my socks off. So I actually think it earned the 2.5 that I gave it. The interior art, I went with 3.5. It was good. I will say, if I read the original newsprint, my grade may have been affected because, man, it's amazing what they do to the colors on these True Believers, and it was really loud and bright, and I kind of liked the little more muted tone that I saw from Roger's newsprint copy. But still, and I'm sorry to Barry Windsor-Smith, but I can't, when it comes to Conan, I can't help but, when it comes to art, compare him to John, Buscema. So I'm seeing moments of, Conan's body positioning and action moments where I'm like, didn't quite nail it there. But then again, I'm kind of comparing him to the master of dynamic motion in Buscema. But, that's where my mind went with that. Still good outing for that. The writing, I guess you can't expect the world from a Conan story, but I do still think there was more potential to spend more time with Conan. And Gino made a good point too, that even if we weren't following narration in his head, the omniscient narrator kind of describing, like, I think the way you said it was like with reckless abandon and jumped into the fray, whatever, stuff like that, of let the narrator kind of give you a little bit of what this guy's about. Because for a #1 issue, like we said, we know Conan now in hindsight, but at the time, this wasn't, it's not, it wasn't ringing bells with most of the readers, I would think. So I think they could have been a little more mindful of that with the writing of the first issue. Concept, of course. Props to Marvel for doing this and kind of widening the genre more than just superheroes. Comic books can get into the crime and noir, the barbarian, the sword and sorcery, the magic, the horror, and Conan, I think, is probably one of the pioneers in that. It's a really long-running, respected series, and I think it was one of the more prominent titles that Marvel put out that strayed from your basic superhero genre. That's near and dear to my heart, no doubt. But just for the sake of the comic books medium, I like to see us get the most out of the medium, because I think it's one of the greatest ways to tell a story there is. You know, a mashup of literature and art, which is what a comic is. You know, it doesn't have to tell the story of superhero saving the day. You can tell any kind of story, and that's kind of what they were showing us with Conan. So, with all that being said, it mathematically came out to a 3. Again, because I really don't love the cover, but I think overall, you know, I think it's flirting with a 4, but I think I land on 3.5 for Conan #1.
Another 3.5 from the doubters.
Hey, I made a case for it.
Yeah, man, I mean, you're
I'm
based
not
on everything you said. You know, I was expecting a 4.
No, 3.5. Again, that's above average. I can respect that, Kenny. We'll still be ready. Don't worry about it. Personally, you know, I'm a big fan of Barry Windsor Smith. I think Barry Windsor Smith holds his own any day against John Buscema action pose wise. I think he's right there, you know, legend wise in comic book industry as John Buscema. I mean, Conan to me is in its entirety is completely undervalued because of all of the amazing writers and artists that did work on Conan, that loved writing Conan and drawing Conan, and you can still buy, you know, all these great books and great stories of Conan out of dollar bins all the time. Like in the, you know, the later ones, of course, not always the Bronze Age issues, but this book in particular, you know, I really like the cover. I thought the cover was phenomenal. I've always really liked the interior art here. It's you know, Barry Windsor Smith, all of his action poses. I could have done some better with the inking. I could have done a little better with the story overall. I thought, you know, there were some better concepts that could have happened there, but it didn't get bogged down in first issue-itis, right, where they just spew out a whole bunch. Like the entire history of the character gets blurted out in the first, you know, 4 issues of the comic book. You know, they stayed away from doing that, which was really good and refreshing. Left a lot of meat on the bone, as we like to say here on Graders Notes, for further issues to explore Conan's past, right? And for other writers, if Roy Thomas wasn't going to do it, to come in and, you know, have a little bit of say in what you know, Conan's past would have been and what his origin story might have been. So I think the art did meet really well with the story, even though the story was a little bit wordy, a little bit off on that. So overall, I personally gave it a 4.5.
Wow. Strong.
4.5.
Strong from the Yukon man.
Yeah, 4.5. I should have called myself Yukon Dave, shouldn't I? Well, people wouldn't have known what I was about comic books, though.
You can, that could be your persona here for Graders Notes.
Graders Notes, Yukon Dave. Because I was literally born there, like for real.
Well, I believe you. I believe you. You know, like Kenny's Macho Head 84 and Genome is, you know, the interviewer extraordinaire, you know, so why not?
I think we found a persona for you, or at least a gimmick name for your tournament that you'll be entering.
My tournament? Do I have to come over because I'm taking Brett to hit my heart if nobody's taking him.
Oh, I have to take a ringer. Yeah, sure. As long as you don't wrestle in Montreal, you'll be all right. Yeah.
Second most important grader on this list next to me is, of course, Medra. How do you feel about the overall of this comic book?
Oh man, you know, when Dave's the host, you know you're getting the straight lace opinion every single time, and that's what everybody appreciates. Ever since that Alien versus Predator episode, you know, Dave has got a major following. Okay, so I'm glad I'm in the clear, but overall, well, I'm kind of it's stuck in the middle here, but let me see if I can talk it through. The cover, to me, very well done. Yeah, I mean, there's some funky anatomy issues here and there, but you know, when you're fighting in a scrum like that, you know, you're not going to always have the exact perfect position. but he has, he's nice and big. The background is muted. You can tell that this is for a first issue, very well done, very centered. He's in the spotlight. It shows the power of the issue. It shows the ferocity and the situation in which he's going to be in. So I thought that was well done. The story I thought was the weakest point here. I'm a big Roy Thomas fan, but maybe he's not perfect, for this kind of character. A little too wordy. Again, the situations in which he is talking are a little inappropriate, as far as, when you're trying to survive, you're not going to be, talking all these things that's going to take up your time and energy and breath, but again, nitpicking. And again, I didn't like that they sort of forced a few things in, like that, like to sort of shortcut, like the look into that stone for his future and his past. I could have done with something a little bit different, a little more in line with Conan and his ferocity, his intention, his demeanor, rather than just him telling us things. Art, I think, was solid. I don't necessarily agree with Dave. I think Buscema is a level above Barry Windsor Smith, but slightly. And I thought he was very good here. I think in the later in the teens, he gets near perfect, because the inking gets stronger and he gets a better grasp of the character and the landscapes and the situations. But in this particular issue, I thought he did a better than average grade. The concept is off the charts. I think we've discussed this, ad nauseum. Major home run here. A risk, yes, but again, with no risk, there's little, there's going to be no reward, and they really hit a big one here, considering the different characters that sprung from this, the different media that sprung from this, and that they still were able to get this license and have it today is just something grand. I want to give it a 4.5, but I think the story is just too critical an element for me to sort of, put a blind eye to. So I'm going to knock it down to a 4.
Knock it down to a 4. Still, 4 is a nice high number for any issue. Okay, so a 4 overall, very good grade. Definitely can tell that Roger liked this. Kenny, I think for overall, you like this. Yeah, Dave. Sure. And I, of course, loved it. Right. So let's find out what the chat feels of the overall. Give us your chat grades. Let us get them in there. Most important grader of the bunch, the chat.
There we go. Now Dave is talking. By the way, here's the serviceable meter for this episode. Just a 1.
Just one.
Dun,
Just a
dun.
1. I had it to 9. I was expecting at least 4 or 5, but oh well. Too good an issue, I guess, in that regards.
Yeah. I guess the story can be considered serviceable too, but I think it's a little better than average, honestly, just because of the.
Hold on.
twist.
I heard a serviceable in there. Hold on.
There you go.
Mhm.
I heard a serviceable.
But I was just commenting on the word serviceable, so you can't really count that.
Now
Just like
two.
I said it now. Yeah, it's actually 3 now.
Oh, now 3. It's getting, we're getting better.
Y'all need to start tracking this too in the chat.
Hey, you never
Need
know.
feedback at the end of the year.
We could
After the
track
year, how many times do I
for
say it?
Dave, and you never know. We could track, POC for Kenny. Who knows?
Well, while we're waiting on grades to come in, for any of those out there who like to read books at all, do yourself a favor. If you've never read any of the Robert Howard stories, just go download a few of them. They're so good. They're quick reads, and you might be astounded at what this guy was writing about. 1930, actually the 20s was when he wrote it.
Yeah.
He wrote these for short magazine pieces, basically, and he breathes so much life into this character. It's just I can see myself like striding across the plain sometimes when you start reading these stories. They're just so good. So highly recommended to read those to find out a little bit about the source material.
It's such a shame that he never got the fame during his lifetime that he got posthumously, because I'm positive that if his mother hadn't gotten sick and he had gotten better feedback earlier from Weird Tales and those other pulps, that we would be talking about a giant in the literary industry rather than just somebody who created a giant.
Steven Spock 7. Steven Spock made a pretty funny comment when we were talking about old barbarians. He's like, "Was Captain Caveman first?"
Yeah.
That dude could fly.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Hey,
a free
I was a
audit.
big fan of Thundar the Barbarian. Remember him from Saturday morning?
Yeah, man.
Mhm.
Yeah, man. With Ukla the Mock. Yeah,
The Mock.
yeah. I never missed that cartoon. Never.
A runaway planet travels between the moon and the Earth, splitting the moon in half.
Nice, Dave. Nice. You're impressive, buddy. Now, what was the name of the lady?
Oh, I want to say Tila, but that's He-Man.
Nope, that's
Yeah.
He-Man.
Yeah. Darn, totally escapes me.
I'll give you a clue. She shares the name with a Disney character.
Ariel?
There you go.
Oh.
Right. Yeah.
You're good, Dave. You're good.
And
Yeah, I like that.
And I should, while we're just letting the last chat grades go in, the AOK that I watched my buddy Biggie Shack open up from Mr. Miracle was that was really fun to watch, man. And that art piece, dude, I was hyped for that.
That was
perfect.
That was amazing.
And he said, "When you get on the Graders notes, make sure you personally thank him for me." Man, that's good shit. A killer Hulk Hogan drawing, personalized for Biggie Shack. That was fun to watch, man. That was a tremendous drawing. Good shit.
Well, you know, I just wanted to do something nice for the guy. I do like the guy, and I do tease him a lot online. So I think sometimes he gets a little butthurt with me because I'm always teasing him. But I'm one of those guys that if I don't like you, I'll ignore you. If I do like you, I'm going to tease you like crazy, especially if something stupid happens, like you change your name to Melody by accident. Well, I'm going to tease you unmercifully on stuff like that, right? But I did want to do something nice for Biggie, and I have been trying to practice with using colored pencil crayons, right? It's not something I've done before. I usually use paint or just do like grayscale black and white stuff. So I was practicing and it worked out really well. I thought, Biggie'd probably like it, and fucking sent it to him.
Yeah,
that was great.
Epic stuff. That really was. I was so happy for him. You could tell he was just he didn't even know what to say at some point. He was just so blown away, And that's for Biggie. That's different.
Yeah,
he's not a loss for words normally.
It's tough to make him shut up.
I didn't say that. I just said he was moved. Let's just put it that way. All right. All right, guys. Let's land the plane here. All right. I think the first one. I think Hialeah is first here, so let's go with the overall here.
Oh, and you know what? Prior to that, Mastodon and Unruly Simeon had to check out early, and they both left 5 behind for their overall grade. So
5 overall.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, that's strong. Okay, so these are Dave fans for sure. All right.
Yeah.
Hialeah, you got those ready, Kenny? Hialeah comes in with a 4. 4 with a Belit. Obviously a fan of the later of the later Conan run here in the Bronze Age. Biggie Shack goes for a 5. It was a game changer, and I can appreciate that. I agree with you. It was a game changer. Steven Spock comes in with a 4.5 and a long live and prosper. Likewise to both of you. Grayman 3.
3.
Not a fan apparently. Heroes Got Icons comes in with a 4. James Howard comes in with a 4. Gene Paul's Peter 4.5 on the art. Proportions were agreed. I'm assuming it's 4.5 overall. He's talking about the art, but we'll take that as the overall. And I think that's it for the night, guys.
And by the way, kudos to Gray Man for hanging in there. Was it 3:15 your time over there right now? So thank you.
Yeah, our illustrious alumni is sticking with us.
Don't thank the man that gave you 3.
And by the way, if you haven't seen Gray Man's video, it's a few. I don't know how many videos ago it is, but it's video. Gray Man doing a video where he's like kind of like a parody of Aquaman, and his buddy is filming. He's literally in the ocean, he swims out from the distance of the ocean and basically cuts a promo as Aquaman, but his name is actually Wet Bloke. Yo, the Wet Bloke video. Please watch, Gray Man.
Wet Bloke with a garden fork as a trident.
Dude,
brilliant.
I can find that one now.
Do they have Baker Axe in England? Yeah.
All right, guys.
Start
wrapping things up here a little bit.
What's the total? What's the tally?
It came to actually, I guess it would be 5, wouldn't it? Yeah, it was a little over 4 point. I guess it's a 5.
Really?
Yeah, that's right. 5.
Yeah, 4.8. Yeah, the 5s rounded it up.
Wow,
Best back group ever.
Yeah,
but Dave is not sleeping tonight.
No, I'm hyped now.
He is hyped now.
What is best in life? To finish your comic book runs, to see them graded before you, and to hear the lamentations of collectors that don't have your keys.
Oh boy, lamentation.
He's been waiting all night to say that.
I didn't think I'd hear that one in this.
Anyways, guys, I really appreciate everybody that showed up in the chat. Not everybody stayed for the whole time, but we always had a really high number of people participating, coming in and out. We appreciate everybody that views. We especially appreciate everybody that views and participates with us. The chat is one of the best parts, and one of our personal favorite parts about doing Graders Notes is getting the opinions of the chat. So thank you all for participating with us tonight. Thanks to everybody that's on my panel. Let's start with Mr. Roger Medarog. Sir, do you have anything you would like to make an announcement for coming up on your channel?
Well, before Genome announces the next book for next Graders Notes, I just wanted to, again, like you did, Dave, thank you, everybody in the chat, for supporting this show. It is such a blast to be with these 3 guys and to be with all of you in the chat. Very honored. It's more fun than should be allowed legally, right? But I have my usual stuff coming up. A little bit changing the schedule. This weekend I have my Bear Island Royal Guard contest entry coming up on Saturday. Kenny, I mentioned you in there, so please watch.
I always do.
On Monday, I'm on the No Faces chat, which is going to be our 1-year anniversary chat. So I don't know what Bub has up for that, but I bet you it's going to be epic. And on Tuesday, I will have a special video up, and Wednesday this time we will have the roundup because 4th of July falls on a Thursday.
Right. Yeah. 4th of July. Forget about that.
Yeah. Us Americans. Yeah.
It's y'all Americans.
Yeah.
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 No, we Canadians just like to get it out first. Ours is July 1st, right? So
yeah.
That's Canada Day.
Canada Day. Yeah. Yeah.
The bon fit to Canada.
Oh, Canada.
Right. Gino. David. Gino presents Mr. Card playing, game playing, Hearthstone playing, video making, got all that kind of shit on his channel kind of guy. What do you got coming up?
Well, Genome Presents Variety. That's the name of the game over at my channel lately. I've been even more unfocused than usual as of late. I'm getting pulled in every direction. I haven't actually played any Hearthstone in a long time. I haven't been on in like 3 weeks, but
liar.
So I may get back into that a little more. We'll see. I usually live stream that stuff. So got some more movie reviews. Hopefully this weekend. I'm going to watch it and pull clips tomorrow. Friday 13th, part 6. My ongoing review series of that amazing series. So look for that probably around Sunday. It takes a long time to edit all that stuff. So so that'll be up here. Got a lot of motovlog stuff from my trip in Florida. I gotta get uploaded. I just finding the time to do it between work. I don't work tomorrow, so luckily for me, I can probably get some more things uploaded. I got at least 2 more comic reviews. As I said before, The Boy Who Collects Spider-Man, I've been needing to review that forever. It deserves a long dissertation. So, in fact, maybe we'll do that on Graders Notes. But one of these days, we'll see. And the other ones, I want to do Punisher 2099 and kind of do a retro review on that one as well. So look for those in the near future. I've also thought about, now let me know what you guys think in the chat. I've been thinking about doing a paint series a little bit because I was doing some oil paintings at work for quite a while. And I slacked off here last couple of months just because it's annoying to do at work. So I may do some how-tos of how I do it. I need to set up my garage and do it out there. So that might be a future series, but for now.
Yeah, check out Genome's Instagram page for him posting his painting work.
It's really good stuff. Landscape stuff in there.
Pull my Bob Ross.
Yeah,
or my Bill Alexander if I really want to go OG. But yeah, so that's basically it. It's just a little bit everything. So I can't tell you what I'm gonna do next, other than I know I'm doing the movie review next and the motovlog thing for sure. So be more of that coming up in the very near future.
And in 2 weeks, we will be reviewing.
We'll do it at the end. As everyone hasn't spoke yet, right? We gotta go through.
Yeah, I'll give
I thought you were gonna add it into your little soliloquy there.
Yeah, I guess we can close out on that. For me is real quick. I love doing the show with you guys, my homies. This is one of my favorite shows I look forward to doing. Dissecting one single comic issue. It's good stuff. With these three guys is awesome. As far as my channel goes, tomorrow night, speaking of the immortal Biggie Shack, he's come up a few times in this show. The Mega Power Hour, brother, is when me and my buddy Biggie Shack, Macho Head, and Biggie Shackamania link up, and we just have a good time. It's that's a show that you tune into if you just want to have some laughs and watch a couple dudes chop it up about comics and pro wrestling and stuff. So that's tomorrow night, and we're probably going to be talking about because there's a tournament coming up soon. That's going to be, the details are going to be announced very soon. There is a little pro wrestling gimmick vibe that's kind of working its way into this comic book community of ours. If you've noticed, such as myself and Biggie Shack, pioneers of the gimmicks, if you ask me, and The Hunt, it has a lot of that stuff, and I think it's a fun time, and I have a cool idea that everyone in the community can take part in, whether you're in the 16-man tournament, head-to-head, the battle of the books, or you're in the very important audience because your votes are going to decide the tide here. So we can get, tune into Mega Power Hour tomorrow. I'll probably hear a little bit more about that, tell you how that works. That'll be a good time.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
I like it.
And I'm structuring it so it's not just going to be a who has the most expensive book battle. Once I lay out the format to you guys, you'll see that it's not rewarding the most expensive book you can go out and find and stunt that way. It rewards an eclectic collection, and you're going to be able to the guy with the most well-rounded collection will fare well in the tournament. Nice. So that's something to stay tuned to, and that's all I got going on.
Nice. Yeah, I'm actually one of the contestants going to be in that tournament, so I'm really looking forward to doing that. I'm just waiting to crush some people. They're like, "Oh, you never proved yourself by winning the hunt." I never won the hunt because I'd never been on the hunt. Otherwise, I would be fucking champion of YouTube. Trust me. You guys don't even know the eclectic kind of comic book collection I got. This is not going to be that hard. Anyway.
I'm definitely looking forward to you being in that tournament. I can't wait.
The gauntlet has been thrown down, guys.
Yes.
Part of the tournament, I guess, is a little bit of a debate part. So bring that shit on, because you guys can hear me. I'm holding back. I am holding back, but in this slab down, it is on like Donkey Kong. I am going to crush anybody that tries to put up. You can put up an AF-15 against me. I will make you feel like it is the worst book you ever had. The chat will agree with me.
Yes.
Anyway, I am taking a break from my 5 undervalued. I did put up a new video today where I do a little bit of a talk, and we do 5 comic books, undervalued comic books. My daughter is back from university, so I'm going to take a little bit of time with her. And yeah, so I'm going to take a little break from the 5 undervalued. I still will be here next episode for Graders Notes for sure. I still have time to do slab down. Don't worry about any of that kind of stuff. But I don't want to make promises about doing a 5 undervalue when I know I'm going to be so busy for the time being. So for me, it's a little bit of a hiatus, couple of weeks where there's not going to be enough 5 undervalue. Still looking forward to kicking some ass. Yeah, that's right. Looking at you, White Whale, kicking ass.
We're getting some heat, brother.
All right, so we're going to end it on that note because
we're going to end it on.
I know
we're going to end it on the book for next week or 2
the
weeks.
book for next week. I was even saying, oh yeah, I'll give him time.
Yeah.
Anyway, David, please tell us what your pick for next 2 weeks from now is.
All right, so everyone knows that I'm a Marvel and Dark Horse mark. You know, I tend to stick to those a lot, but I did have some DC back in the day that was near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to go with not really a reboot, but a reissue. They kind of follow the Marvel pattern here by just glutting the market with what was selling. So I was a big fan of the Detective Comics series, and they brought some of the heavy hitters over there into Batman Shadow of the Bat #1. That is what we want to review next. It's got Brave Fogel and Grant working on that. So they put some heavy hitters in this, and this was right around the time of
Dun, dun.
Batman Returns. So they went ape with it. So, but I really enjoyed the run, and I want to take a look back at #1 and see if it holds up and stands up to the test of time.
Excellent pick, sir. I'm really looking forward to doing the Graders Note and reviewing that one.
Sir can response here.
Undoubtedly.
If you see that, actually, I don't know if you can see it on the camera too. This is one of the ones that got water damaged really bad from my Great Flood.
Yeah,
So my books look like that.
Someone dried their car off with that one.
Yeah, it makes a good chamois.
ShamWow. Anyway, we'll end it on the ShamWow note. This has been Graders Notes for this June 27th, 2019. Everybody here, including the chat, fabulous grades, fabulous time, guys. Thank you. Join us again in 2 weeks when we go over Shadow of the Bat. I'm Mr. Miracle. These are my compadres, Metarog, Genome, and Comic Kid 84, and we'll see you next time on Graders Notes.
Peace.